Hey Mike, you had an exciting end to the week last week. What did you get involved in?
So last week we had our first live life theme event, and it
Nice.
was amazing. I figured it was going to be a ton of fun, but it definitely even exceeded my expectations. We ended up having a pretty small group, so 5 people joined us, and yeah, that was honestly probably perfect because we were really able to go deep. Basically, the way we structured it is we had instructional sessions, which were about an hour, and then Q&A after that. Then we would break for 30 minutes, and everyone would go off and answer the reflection questions, come back, and for 30 minutes, we would talk about their insights, their responses. And because there was a small group, we were able to kind of go deeper with every single person in the group. So yeah, we did that over 2 solid days,
Nice.
and yeah, it was amazing. I definitely think we are going to do it again. Although we were shooting for 10 people this first time around, 5 was awesome, and now it's got me thinking maybe we just have to cap this at 5 every time. I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't know logistically. It's obviously it's easier to make money on an event when you have more people there, but
Yeah.
um, yeah, it really couldn't have asked for a better group. The weather worked out. It was great during the day. There was one night we went out to dinner when there was supposed to be this big storm, but it kind of split and went around us, so that
Oh,
didn't
nice.
affect us a whole lot. Um, but yeah, it was so much fun.
For future plans or for future events, like what are you thinking? Oh, I would do this different, or I would keep this the same. Like, what are the highlights there?
Yeah. So I asked at the end, what would you like to see different? And people had some very minor suggestions and tweaks for things. But in terms of the overall structure, I don't think we would change much. Uh, it was pretty great. I think we could probably it would require more practice and less things going wrong the week of, but it'd be great to have Rachel be a little bit more involved in the presentation of the material. But we function pretty well as a team where I present the information because I'm the one who made it all, anyways. And then she's gone through it with me several times, so she pops in whenever she's got insight and color commentary. And every time we go through like live theme examples, we're both sharing our examples so people have more context for stuff. I don't know. It went really great. I think
Awesome.
maybe we would be building just a little bit more time for the reflection. We gave half hour for every time that people had to go off and think through their the reflection questions. But and that could have been a little bit longer. But also, I don't want to extend the event too much. We were basically 9 to 4 both Thursday and Friday with an hour and a half for lunch, and I feel like that was a good um, good overall like a structure in terms of time required and agenda. If you have people who are in the spot doing that sort of like heavy thinking for too long, it's real easy to cross the
Oh yeah.
line, and now everybody's just burnt out and wants it to be over.
Yeah. That workshop that we run that I've told you about before, that's probably been our hardest thing to figure out too is how much time do you give people to do the activities before you bring them back in and debrief and then roll to the next activity. And I feel like no matter how much you do, you can't hit it. Like you can never hit it. Like we'll give more time one year and then people are like, "Oh, you gave us too much time." Like there was too much sitting around and then we give less time the next year and they're like, "Oh, we didn't have enough time to do that activity." And then cohorts change. But we're running with like 30 people at this
Mm-hmm.
point, so it's kind of hard. Like you can't please 30 people like no matter how hard you try.
Yeah.
So it makes it tough. Yeah. Yeah, well that's awesome though. I'm glad it went well.
Yeah, me too. I was pretty nervous about it.
Yeah.
As,
When are you running the next one? Because that's what people want to know.
not even gonna think about it for a while.
Okay, okay, okay. All
Yeah,
right, good.
lots of extraneous circumstances leading up to it, that made it a little bit stressful. I'm glad that we're done with that. I'm glad that the practical PKM hybrid cohort launch is wrapping up. I want to get back into a normal rhythm
Yeah,
and not think
yeah,
about
it's
that
good.
extra stuff for a while.
And what month do you think that'll happen in?
June.
Okay.
Because
Okay, good.
as we record this, my wife and daughter are leaving. We talked about this before we hit record. They're going to Hawaii for 10 days. Well, actually, I guess 9 days. So, yeah, I am a single parent for the the next while.
Yep. Yep. Well, have fun, Rachel.
Yep. So, yeah, action items. I have mixed success here. So I took the quiz from Wild Courage, and I took this before the live event, and I don't remember what the results were. So that's really all you need to know about this quiz. It's definitely not one of the better quizzes that I've seen. It's more like a Facebook personality test, you know. So a little bit disappointed in that one. The idea of adding what I need now to the family meeting format is not done because we haven't had a family meeting since we recorded this. Haven't been able to squeeze in date night to pull that one off. Say no to the small things. I mean, I basically did that out of necessity the last couple of weeks.
Congratulations. You won that one. You won that one by
okay, thanks.
not by choice.
Yeah. Revamping my morning routine. This has not been intentionally done, so guess I failed at that one too. And then I also talked about the pull it and bullet, the converting the email to 3 bullet points. I haven't done this, but I had another thought about the newsletter, which actually I'm kind of curious as to whether you like this approach. So I stole some inspiration from Sahil Bloom, and I started doing my newsletter as a podcast. I think we talked about that last time. Mm-hmm. I also noticed recently that he sends his newsletter multiple times per week, but he basically breaks up the sections into different days. So there's 3 sections, but he sends them on like Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then like a recap on Saturday of everything that you may have missed. I kind of like that idea. I don't know if I'll do the recap thing on Saturday, but I've got the 3 different sections. I've got the something cool, I've got the book notes, and then I've got the original essay. And I like the idea of breaking that apart and sending smaller newsletter chunks at different points throughout the week. Do you think that's a good idea or a bad idea? Should I just keep it all as like the one Practical PKM newsletter with the 3 different sections?
You are asking the wrong guy. Like 100% you're asking the wrong guy, because I loathe is probably not, it's probably an appropriate word. I loathe email. Like loathe it with a passion, right? So for me, for you to break your email into 3 chunks is now like more emails that I get that I already don't like. And it has nothing to do with you. I love you, Mike. Right? Like you're an amazing human. I just don't like email at all. So
yeah, it's fair.
I'm definitely not your guy. Now, from a people who are engaged and want to follow your content, I actually think the bite-sized chunks makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And then I think if you do that though, you have to send the recap email. Because I think some people like aren't going to want to look at it until you send the recap one on Saturday, because they're more of a once a week kind of person, and then you'll have the other people. So I actually think you have to do both of those. That's what my gut says.
Okay.
And I'm the guy who doesn't like email.
Yeah. All right. Well, since Cory's no help, I'll put it out to the Bookworm listeners.
There you go.
Maybe I'll put together a poll and see what people think. I'm not sure where to even place that now. I guess Blue Sky, huh?
So this is a good place for folks to find us, because we have access and control of all of the social media again. We've got Instagram, we've got Threads, we've got X, we've got Blue Sky, we've got it all. So now everything's up. Actually, I might have lied about Blue Sky. Bookworm might not be on Blue Sky yet, but it's on all the other things right now. But yours, Mike, I would have them come to you. Right? I would have them come to your.
Yeah.
I'd put the link in the show notes for your personal stuff.
All right. Well, I'll figure out where that poll is going to be, but I would love to hear from people, because it's the same amount of work. Whether I would post 3 smaller snippets or 1 longer email, but yeah, I think I would probably like to get the smaller ones, and then you can opt out of the ones that you don't want. If you're not going to use Obsidian, but you like the book notes and the general PKM essays, then you could just opt out of that, the something cool part. But yeah, I don't know.
Can I redeem myself for being helpful?
Sure.
I'd pick a schedule and I'd stick to the schedule. So like you send this out on Monday, this out on Wednesday,
Yep.
this out on Friday,
Yep.
because then I can pay attention to the one I care about or the two I care about or all three if I want to.
Right. Yeah, that would be the goal if we did it that way. So, all right. Well, please chime in. I'd love to know. Want my newsletter to be the in the format that's people want. So, all right. Those are my action items. How about you, Corey?
So my action items, the first one I have is the truth or tales process. So what is the truth, and then what are you telling yourself? What tale are you telling yourself to reduce shame? Thankfully, I haven't really had like a one pop up in the last time since we've recorded, so I haven't really thought about that one too much. But I think that one's going to stay around in the old brain as things pop up, and I go, "Is this the truth, or am I telling myself a tale right now?" So that one's a big red X, but that's an okay big red X for me. The identify my dynamic dozen. I've actually thought about this one a good bit. I did not get to a dozen, but I've been trying to think more critically about like who are those people that you want to be around, right? Like who are those people that you want to engage with more and more and more and more frequently. So I think I'm much more along the lines of like the five people you most resemble the five people you spend the most time with kind of a thing. I'm
Mm-hmm.
much more on that than the dynamic dozen, but like I thought about this one. So this one's going to be a yellow. I'm going to give myself a yellow light on this one. Cause I feel like I made a little progress, but not a ton. And then I only had two, out of last week. So those are my two.
So you couldn't fail as much as I did.
Exactly. Right. I could not fail as much as you, Mike.
Yeah, that's okay. All right. Let's talk about today's book, which is When by Daniel Pink. And the reason behind choosing this one is that in 222 episodes of Bookworm, somehow we have never covered a Daniel Pink book. I feel like it's been referenced many times in other books that we have read, but we have never actually covered a Daniel Pink book. So I started looking at some of the different ones that are out there. He's written a bunch of them. And When was the one that sounded the most interesting to me? The subtitle is The Scientific Secrets of Perfect Timing. I mean, come on. Who doesn't want to know the scientific secrets of perfect timing?
Exactly. I agree with you. When you put this one out there, I was like, yeah, I mean, I've listened to other Daniel Pink books before, while I've been driving and stuff. So I'm a fan of Daniel Pink's work, and I thought this one was pretty good.
Cool. The structure of this book is familiar yet refreshing. So there are 3 different parts, as you do with your standard productivity book, plus an introduction. However, the parts are all fairly short. So there's the introduction, Captain Turner's Decision. Then there's part 1, the day, and there's 2 chapters there. The hidden pattern of everyday life, afternoons and coffee spoons. Part 2 is beginnings, endings, and in-betweens. So there's 3 different chapters there, beginnings, midpoints, and endings. And then the last part 3, sinking and thinking. So sinking fast and slow. And then number 7, thinking in tenses. And there is no wrap-up conclusion where I tell you everything that I just told you, which I kind of appreciate.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the best approach for this book is just to go chapter by chapter, since there's only 7 chapters. Shouldn't be a problem. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I agree completely. I have a question for you as we get started.
Okay. What's that?
For me, this book read really fast. Like, I mean, I just felt like I just sped through this book, not on purpose. I wasn't trying. Like, I just felt like it was like a natural read. It went really quick. It wasn't, I don't think that the page count was all that small, but it just felt like it flowed really, really well. Did you have the same experience? Like, did it flow for you too?
I did. And I had the same thought and was kind of asking myself, why is that? And I think it's because his storytelling is superb. The stories, a lot of the books that we read, the stories are good. I mean, you have to be a pretty good storyteller just to get a book published that we would typically get on our radar, basically, for something like Bookworm. You have to be a pretty decent author. And so there's an element of like a certain level of storytelling proficiency that comes along with that. But many of the stories and many of the books that we read, you start to get the formula. You start reading a story, you're like, okay, here's another story. And then I feel like, okay, can I just skip to the end and see what the main point of this story is?
Yep.
You can't do that with a Daniel
Yep.
Pink story. I don't know what it is specifically about these stories, but the specific terminology and words that he uses keeps you engaged and attached for every single story that he tells.
I couldn't agree more. Like I thought they were all relevant, which, I'll put a little, I guess, foreshadowing out there, right? In the next book that I've already started reading, I can't tell you I think the same thing about all the stories that are in there, but we're gonna hold that. We're gonna hold that for the next episode. But no, I agree with you completely. Like I think the stories were really, really good, and then I'm not surprisingly a kind of research study nerd. So it's like when we're reading about these studies and how they link to the key points he's trying to make, like I don't know, I just jive with that. So that made a lot of sense to me too as we worked through them.
Cool. So speaking of stories, let's talk about the introduction here, which begins with a story, Captain Turner's Decision. Captain Turner was or William Turner was the captain of the Lusitania, and
it's the Lusitania. Yeah. Have you read Dead Wake?
No, I haven't.
By Eric Larson?
Mm-mm.
Okay. So I've read Dead Wake by Eric Larson, which is, by the way, a phenomenal book if you're into the history of, different wars and kind of the crossing of the Lusitania. But anyhow, sorry. I didn't mean
Lusitania.
to go off on a tangent.
All right. So this was a boat with a bunch of civilians, right? That just decided in the middle of tensions with World War I, we're gonna chance it.
Yep. And it was during the whole U-boat thing.
Yep.
And so the U-boats are traveling around, but like if you read Dead Wake, it's just kind of fascinating, like how people made decisions and why they made certain decisions and why they didn't make other decisions. It's really, really cool.
Yeah. So the interesting thing about this story was that Captain William Turner is the one who is responsible for all these people on board, right? The boat obviously gets sunk by German U-boats. It happens on May 7th, 1915. And through the story, basically there's this period where they can only go so fast. And then at one point, they've made it through the hard part. They see land. At this point, they could just full throttle and outrun any U-boats that happen to be in the area, but they don't. So he could have gone faster, but he doesn't. They end up sinking the ship. Nearly 1,200 people die, including 123 of the 141 Americans that were on board. I'm not sure why Daniel Pink called out that specifically, but
it's because that's what got America involved in World War I.
Ah, that's right.
Most of
Yep.
them were wealthy. Like most of the Americans were like super wealthy, kind of people. And now America felt like they had to respond and get involved in World War I.
Okay. I mean, this is not necessarily a story about World War I. This is a story about why didn't Captain William Turner floor it once he saw land.
Yep. And why didn't he zigzag? Because that was a common pattern then, is they would like kind of zigzag their boat, and he didn't do that, even though it would have made sense to do that. He knew it was a channel, so why didn't he make the decisions when he should have made the decisions? That was what Pink was trying to get at.
Yeah, and I don't think in the introduction he gives a very clear answer. He sort of alludes to different things later on, including like, well, it's the afternoon, so people make bad decisions in the afternoon because they're tired, all that kind of stuff. But very effective way to open up a book about making better decisions and then highlighting a story where a bad decision had very serious consequences.
Correct. Yep. Correct.
All right.
I mean, I don't really have anything to add here. I thought it was a great introduction to the book, but I also had some tie to it because I've read about that before. So
yeah, I can
help me out.
I can see that. I didn't have any context, but I still thought it was a great story and sets the stage for the rest of it. We should probably go into part 1 next. So part 1 is the day, and then the first chapter here is the hidden pattern of everyday life. And this chapter. Actually, I guess we should mention that each one of these chapters, up until the last one, is going to follow the same format now, where it's going to be a chapter about the material, and then at the end of each chapter is a time hacker's handbook, which has different chapters that correspond to the chapters of the book. And that is where you've got a bunch of the different, these are the 5 steps to whatever, or this is what you should do if you're going to apply this yourself. But with the hidden pattern of everyday life, this is really just kind of talking generally about the circadian rhythms that people have and pointing out that our cognitive abilities are not constant as we go through our day. So figuring out your chronotype, it talks about morning larks, night owls, and third birds. But regardless of which one of those you fall into, we all experience a day in 3 specific stages: a peak, a trough, and then a rebound. I'm curious, I think I know the answer, but which one of those do you identify with?
I was going to ask you the exact same question, so I'm so glad you did this. I'm 100% a lark. Without a doubt, 100% a lark, right? I'm up way too early, and then by like 8 o'clock, I'm done. Like, I'm absolutely toast. The do not disturb comes on my phone. You can do whatever you want to do after 8 o'clock, and you're not getting anything until the next day, unless you catch me really randomly in like a spur of, a fit of actually getting work done. But I'm 100% a lark. How about you?
I think I'm probably in the middle. I'm not a lark, I'm not a night owl. I think I probably could have been classified as a night owl in college. But yeah, I don't like getting up super early. I can do it if I have to. I got up pretty early today because I got to get used. I have to adjust so that I can drop people off at the airport really early tomorrow.
Yeah. Mike, I've been like this since I was like 10 years old. Like, I remember sleepovers at my friend's house when I was super young, and they'd be like going after it, and I'd be like, it's 10 o'clock, guys. I'm going to bed. Like, I'm just tired.
That's funny. Yeah, it was interesting to me in this. He talks about how students tend to do better at math earlier in the day. There's a section later about how schools really shouldn't start until later in the morning. I'm kind of curious with the discussion here about academics and timing. Like, is there anything you can do about that? Yeah, I mean, the college schedule's pretty set, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so college is actually easier because students can schedule their own classes. So in most situations, if they know they're a lark or a night owl or whatever it is, they can adjust their schedule and they can load their schedule in a way that gets most of their classes. It's usually can't get 100%. But high school and middle school and elementary school, like our schools in Colorado, I don't want to say all start at different times, but like there is shifts between elementary, middle school, and high school to account for this. They've actually taken this research and they've designed it into the day. So I don't think our middle schools start until like, I don't even know, 8:30, 9 o'clock or something like that. Like they start late, where when I was in middle school, we started at 7:30. I think first bell rang at like 7:25, which I think is good because, I mean, the kids, they're just not ready. Like they need more time to wind into the day, and then they need to go. So I think it's a systemic problem in terms of we make the schedule for the adults who are teaching and the adults who are dropping their kids off and then picking them up after work. We don't make it for what's best for learning. So I would completely agree that we need to consider this more. It's just really, really hard because you're dealing with a lot of people and you're dealing with a lot of factors and busing and meals and parents' work schedules and all of that stuff. So it's a really hard problem to solve.
Yeah. He does get into that a little bit later, and I'm not necessarily suggesting that we optimize specifically for one group over the other. It just occurs to me because he talks in this chapter about the different chronotypes, your own personal pattern of circadian rhythms, and there really isn't one specific way that people are wired. In fact, he mentions Daily Rituals by Mike Cory, which is a fascinating book about a whole bunch of creative people and their daily routines. And there's all sorts of different stuff in there. The one takeaway from that book is that everyone's got their own way that they make stuff or they do their thinking. The Time Hacker's Handbook that goes with this chapter talks about some different, some different things to consider in terms of when you're going to do certain things. So he mentions that you should exercise in the morning if you want to lose weight, boost mood, keep to your routine, or build strength. Exercise in the afternoon to avoid injury, perform your best, or enjoy the workout a bit more. That's kind of interesting. I never really thought about the actual things that you get from the exercise that you do being different based on when you decided to do the exercise.
Yeah, I think that's one of my big takeaways from this. So in the time hackers section, and then in the earlier section where he talks about research, he talks about it in the earlier section about our cognitive abilities being different at different times of the day, which I could not agree with more, right? Like, I mean, there are times when I write better. There are times when I read and think better. There are times when I do math better. Like, there are just times when, and I can tell you right now, I do nothing well from about 2:30 till about 4, right? Like, it's a lull in the day. He shows data on that. A lot of people have that lull in the afternoon. And it goes to, I really liked where he started talking about like the other activities too. He throws a chart in that time hacker section, analytical tasks. Here's where you should do it if you're this type of insight tasks. Here's where you should do it. Make an impression, making a decision. I think one of my big takeaways from this is I don't really want to have my oil changed later in the afternoon, right? Because there's a much higher likelihood that the mechanic's going to leave a wrench in my car, or they're going to mess something up. So it's changed the way I think about was the example that he gave in the book the dental cleaning, or what was it? I forget what it was, but there was definitely a specific example where he was like, people who get this done in the morning have a much better experience than people who get it done in the afternoon. But I can't remember what exactly it was.
Yeah, that might actually be the next chapter, because that talks about the afternoon stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Before we go there, one additional action item that I had jotted down here, but I have to take back now, is I wanted to take the MCTQ, the Munich Chronotype Questionnaire, to figure out my chronotype. And if you go to the link that he has there, there's the page for the assessment, and it says the online version, which until recently existed here, is in the process of being moved by its creator to another location on the web. And if and when it comes back, we'll put it here. But it's like you can take the paper version of this this instrument, but I have no interest in doing that. So that's kind of a bummer. I guess this book was written several years ago, so it's not a surprise that not every link is still relevant. But
yeah, you could be like me and just know what yours is.
I mean, I basically do. I probably don't need to take the assessment, but I'm a sucker for these quizzes, as you know. So
I know you are. Yeah. All right. You ready for chapter 2?
Yeah, let's do it. Chapter 2 is afternoons and coffee spoons, and basically talking about the dip in the afternoon.
Yep.
Traffic accidents tend to peak between 2 to 6 a.m., but also 2 to 4 p.m. And the most unproductive moment of the day, he identifies specifically as 2:55 p.m.
Yep. Very, very detailed in his reporting here.
Are you done with classes by 2:55 p.m.?
It depends on the semester. So every semester is different. This semester I taught until 4:20. That was when my last class ended, and the afternoon was brutal for the students and for I. I mean, it's just so hard, this afternoon classes.
Yeah. He talks about how midday breaks can help you overcome the trough. Frequent shorter breaks are more effective than the occasional longer ones. I think I tend to agree with that. Talks a little bit about takes 25 minutes for caffeine to kick in, so drink it before you take a nap. The whole idea of like the caffeine nap, that's a cool idea. I kind of want to actually do more of those. I tend to do that on Sundays. We get back from church, I have a cup of coffee after lunch, and then I take a nap for a little bit. Yep. But yeah, I work from home. I could probably squeeze that in.
Oh, you could definitely. Are you familiar with Yoga Nidra or non-sleep deep rest? Have you ever heard of these things?
I've heard of that, the non-sleep deep rest, but
yeah. So this is another version of this that I don't remember if he talked about it or not, but I don't think he did. But it's like basically the precursor to a nap, and then you run through this like kind of mental process, and it does very similar things that a nap does, but without the grogginess.
Gotcha.
And I've done that before, actually in my office at work. Like I've done that before, and it's really effective, super effective in that lull time in the afternoon.
Yeah, my dad used to have this like day bed that he got from his parents that he had his office in a house not next door, but pretty close to where we actually lived. And so like the downstairs, they rewired the living room, and the copy machine was in what used to be the dining room, but it was just a more comfortable place to work, and big yard. So pretty nice environment. But upstairs was where his office was, and they had there was a bathroom across the hall. His office was in this bedroom with a window that overlooked the yard. Across the hallway is this bathroom, which was laid out kind of weird. There was a shower and a sink on one side, and the other side was big and open. So he put this day bed up there, and frequently he would go into the bathroom, and he'd be in there for like 45 minutes, and you knew that he was taking a nap.
Taking a nap. I'm a huge fan of naps, right? If I could nap every day, I would nap every day, Mike. Every day.
All right. Well, I'm going to add that as an official action item, then take more caffeine naps.
I should too.
Another thing that he mentioned here, he shared a short story with this where he used to think that breakfast was the most important meal of the day, and then he officially says lunch is the most important meal of the day. I think his point is not based on like what happens when you digest your food, but basically you need to take a break at that point in the day. So lunch is a good opportunity to do that. But as a intermittent faster who doesn't eat breakfast, I mean, I agree.
yeah. Yes. Lunch is the most important meal of the day because it's my first meal of the day.
Yep.
Yeah, I think one of my action items comes out of this is this idea of lunch as well. Or just kind of tying into this idea of lunch is I typically will eat lunch while working at my desk. Like I don't like to get up and take the official break to do lunch. So, one of my action items would be take an actual lunch break and throw my phone on the counter and don't look at my phone during my lunch break. Like actually do a lunch break.
Nice. That's I think you should totally do it.
Yeah.
My lunch break was not I didn't go to the length where I need to disconnect from my phone specifically, but I'm not really looking at my phone when I'm doing my work. That's actually typically when I will check social media and respond to stuff is during the lunch break. Maybe I should do that too. I don't know. The Time Hacker's Handbook for this chapter, I just jotted down a couple of things. One, there's a specific process for how to take the perfect nap, which is find your afternoon trough time, create a peaceful environment, down a cup of coffee, set a timer for 25 minutes, and then repeat consistently. So like do it regularly. And then the only other thing I jotted down from this section of the book was don't get rid of recess.
Yep.
Let the kids play.
I say when you were with your kids or yourself, I mean, I needed it. Like I needed to get outside and run around, or else I was just kind of like a basket case sitting in my desk. Like I'd been tied down too long. So I don't know if you had the same experience as I do or not.
Yeah. I don't know. I try to get up and move around, but I don't have a specific schedule for it. I probably should. I tend to I'll sit down and I'll create and I'll focus on for a while. And then when I feel stuck, that's when I get up and walk around. And I grew up being homeschooled most of my formative years. I did go to high school so I could play sports and stuff, but I probably have been doing this for as long as I can remember. Just like work for a while and then take a break.
Yeah, I drink enough cups of coffee like during the day, and most of it's decaf, but at the same time I drink enough cups of coffee that like coffee break or getting another cup of coffee is my get up and move around, and so that kind of gives me my natural flow of the day.
Gotcha. All right, ready to go to the next section?
Yep, we're in part 2 already.
Yep. So part 2, 3 chapters here. The first one is beginnings, and this is really about how to start something. There's some interesting stuff in here. It mentions that beginnings have a far greater impact than most of us understand. And this is where he calls out specifically the optimal time for college classes is after 11 a.m.
Yep. I could not agree more. Like, I think that is accurate, 100% accurate.
Yeah, but what do you do with that information? You can't just push everything back 4 hours. I don't know. What time do classes actually start for you?
So our first class is 8 a.m.
8 a.m.
The first time slot is 8 a.m. that you can have a class. And students don't like it. I mean, you'll get like 1 out of 30 students who's like, yeah, I'm a morning person. Like, let's do this, right? And then everybody
Cory
else
Jr.
is like,
yeah.
Yeah, like they're all walking in, like drinking their double, triple espresso, trying to wake up.
Yep.
But I agree. Like the problem is your day goes too late. If you actually try to do this, you have to roll into teaching at 7, 8 o'clock at night, which I'm not going to lie, would probably be better for the students. But, like I don't think that's ever going to happen.
Yeah. I think that kind of leads to a general observation with a lot of the stuff that he talks about in here is you kind of like, yes, there's science behind a lot of these things that he's sharing. And wouldn't it be great if, I could get to this specific way of doing something? You kind of need to do what you can with what you have and then not worry about the rest. Don't get frustrated if you're a college student because optimally you wouldn't have a class until after 11 a.m. But those darn professors make you show up at 8. Like it is what it is. Yeah. And
what I would like to know is, and it's too hard to study because there's too many variables, too many factors. But is it like, oh, I'm 95% if we start after 11 and I'm like 87% effective? You know what I mean? Like, or is it like a big drop? Like if it's a big drop, okay, we need to address those ones. But if it's just like a, 5-10% drop, we can't change the whole system for that.
Right.
Yeah. So the fresh start effect.
Yep.
I feel this so hard all the time, right? Like if I'm going to start something new, it's going to be on a Monday, right? Or it's going to be the beginning of a quarter, or it's going to be the beginning of a month, right? Like I will delay doing good things because it's not the optimal time to start. And it's like so wrong. It's absolutely so wrong. It's like, when is the best time to start? Yesterday. When's the second best time to start? Today, right? Like don't wait for one of these birthday, anniversary, New Year's kind of thing. Just get going, like get after it and get going. And I could not have resonated more with what he said in this section.
So I agree with you. And I did have jotted down the fresh start effect as a thing. I think that's good advice. No, don't wait for the perfect time to get started with something. But I also like the idea of, he mentions that this is a date that people use to end one period and begin another with a clean slate. And another way to describe those is maybe the temporal landmarks. So like the anniversaries, the birthdays. I think if you were going to, you want to start working out, don't wait until January 1st and create a New Year's resolution. Just start going to the gym. That would be one way to kind of push back on this fresh start effect. But I think there's also some value in recognizing those kind of built-in opportunities to reset a little bit.
Yeah.
So like I kind of do this with the personal retreats every quarter. Every quarter it's like, okay, it's a fresh start. Let's do something new here. So I think that this could actually have some positive application as long as you don't pin too much on that. And then also kind of along with the personal retreat is identifying the habits and the routines, like the things that you need to do consistently to make the outcome kind of inevitable. By the way, I came across a quote today by James Clear and I thought of you when I read it because you kind of ribbed me about the goal stuff. He said, people who set goals want to win once. People who create systems want to win all the time or something, or consistently.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. That's good, Mike. That's a zinger right there.
So that's really the approach here, I think, is like you can combine these temporal landmarks with these opportunities to look at and refine your systems. But it is interesting though that the gym visits increased not just at the start of the year, but also at the start of the week and the start of the month. I had never thought about it that way, but I'm sure that that's true.
So the gym I go to had a bump like a week ago or 2 weeks ago, and I was asking like the regulars, because there's the people who are there when it's dead, and then there's the people who are there like only at certain times, and I kept asking the regulars, I was like, why is it so crowded? Like, did something happen? Like, is there like a landmark, a temporal, like I was thinking temporal landmarks, so I wasn't going to say that, but it's like, is there like something that happened that is caused like, the gym at 4:30 in the morning to be this crowded? Like, what is going on? I think the temporal landmark idea, if you think about it from a review point, like you're using it, like your personal retreat, it's a review point, and I know that it's coming, so I can always reevaluate at that point. I think incredibly effective. I think where this falls down for me, right? I'll speak personally, and probably other people, is when you push off a change you should make
Yeah.
until I do my personal retreat. And I think that's where I like took away from this when I was like, oh yeah, don't push that off. Just now, start right now.
Yeah. Although I think even with that, I might, depending on the specific scenario, be okay saying we'll just wait till the next personal retreat. But that requires that you've creased that and you are doing that every quarter. Once you have that momentum, then it's easy to trust the system and be like, well, I'll just add that to the list and I'll think about that when I'm in the state to actually think about that. Because when you have the thought is the worst time to actually take action on it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
I didn't really have anything from the Time Hacker's Handbook for this one. I guess look for the days to make a fresh start. That's kind of a interesting idea because it doesn't always have to be the January 1st. He gave a number. I didn't write it down, but if you just considered the first day of the quarter, the first day of the week, the first day of the month, the first day of the year, your birthday, your anniversary, all these other milestone days, there's like 100 something days, 100 something built-in opportunities in your calendar already to make a fresh start.
Yep. And he gives a bulleted list of the most common ones. One of the things that came out of the Time Hacker Handbook that made me think of you is this idea of like, assume 18 months from now your project is a complete disaster, right? And like you've talked about this before, it's like, what's the worst that can happen? The fear setting scenario, right? And I was like, oh, it's like this aligns with what Mike talks about. So he would say is by thinking through what might cause a false start, you can anticipate some of the problems. So to avoid these false starts, think about what would go wrong and then back into that and plan, design around that essentially, if you will. So we do this in engineering where you think about what are all the failure mechanisms of whatever thing you're trying to design, and you try to design around those. You try to plan and design around those failure mechanisms. So I thought that was a good point out of the Hacker Handbook.
Yeah, the fear setting, that comes from Tim Ferriss. He gave a TED Talk on it. Have you ever watched that TED Talk?
No, I haven't.
Okay. Be curious what you thought of it at some point, but I'll link to that in the show notes for people. No, you don't need to have an action item associated with that unless you really want it. But I think like the how you do that is important. So it's easy to get excited about that general idea. And then my experience, if you don't have any sort of structure or process associated with it, you'll start it and it'll feel uncomfortable and you'll quickly give up. So okay. Sounds like you've got one, that you do in the engineering program. But for people who maybe don't have that background, I would recommend watching the 10-minute TED Talk. He's got a PDF that goes along with it too, which will help walk you down that process. But yeah, definitely a worthwhile exercise. Talked about that at the Life Theme Live event. Awesome. Rachel actually brought it up. She's like, yeah, Mike tricked me into doing this because I was trying to work through the possibility of going out on my own, leaving the day job. And I was like, well, what's the worst that could happen? And she's like, yeah, that's the spirit, thinking like I was just thinking more positively. I'm like, no, seriously, what is the worst that could happen? I didn't tell her we were doing fear setting at that point, but just kind of walking her through the exercise.
That's awesome. You snuck it in there. Right?
Yep. All right. Next one is midpoints. I mean, these are all pretty self-explanatory, which is one thing I kind of like about this particular book. But the thing that stands out to me from this chapter is that hitting a middle point can do one of two things. It can either give us a spark or it can steal our motivation and stall our progress. So spark or slump, essentially. And it's not just humans that experience this. He mentions that even apes experience a slump in well-being during the middle of their lives. People tend to cut corners in the middle, but there is also an exception to this, which is teams. They tend to hit their stride about the halfway point of a project because that's really when you got to get serious. There's also a very effective story and illustration here with a general sports principle. Teams that are behind at halftime, you obviously want to be winning in the game, but it was interesting. The statistics show that teams behind by 1 point at halftime are actually more likely to win. lights a fire underneath them, and they come out stronger in the second half. So that was interesting.
Yeah, I see the uh-oh effect happen all the time, right? Like students are doing work and whatever, and they're like, oh, I got plenty of time. Everything's good. I got plenty of time. And then they go, we only have like 3 weeks left in the semester. And I'm like, yeah. We started talking about this project 6 weeks ago. And they're like, yeah, we did. Right. And you can like see the auto effect, hit them and hit them really hard. I mean, I really liked this idea of the slump, idea. I like that he directly attacks this idea of midlife crisis. That it's like, we call it midlife crisis, but it's really not a midlife crisis. It's really just a sag in, what we think is well-being or whatever it is. And he said we dip in the middle because we're lousy forecasters, which for some reason that like really drew at me. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, my projection or my expectation was wrong. And then when it was wrong, or my life has changed, like my priorities have changed. Cause I think this is the biggest one for me. Right? I mean, I'm 40 now. So I think the biggest one for me is like, what I thought at 20 is nowhere near what my reality is like at 40. And it's like, that's okay. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just, if I still held on to what I held on to at 20 and 25, man, right now would be a really bad time for me. Cause it's just very different, right? I mean,
Yeah.
so many kids and priorities are just different than they were at the 20, 25 stage. So I really like the way he directly attacks that idea of the midlife crisis and reframes it. I'm a big fan of that.
Agreed. I also like, you mentioned the uh-oh effect, but I like the term punctuated equilibrium.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Interesting that it tends to happen at the midpoint. You're talking about the 3 weeks left in the semester. We talked about it for the last 6 weeks. My experience with like the big projects, I think it wouldn't necessarily have occurred right in the middle for me. Like it would have been something that I heard about at the beginning and I put off the entire semester. And so a couple weeks left. Like it's very much more towards the back half of that. Do you find it tends to be in the middle though for your students?
It depends on the due date, right?
Okay.
So everything's depending on the due date. But I would say that for a lot of students, it's the 3/4 mark. So it's the middle of the last half of whatever you do, right? Like,
Okay.
so
Yeah.
like
That makes
that's
sense.
when they start to freak out. It's that 3/4 mark. And it's crazy because it doesn't matter how much you tell them. Like, hey, when we get back from spring break, everything's going to fly. And if you haven't started on this project, you're going to find yourself in a bind. And they get back and they're like, yeah, I didn't do anything. And it's like, daggone it.
Mm-hmm.
So you just gotta keep going, and keep encouraging them.
Yep. I don't know that I have much from the Time Hacker's Handbook for this section. I mean, couple like just specific things, which not action items associated with this, but talks about setting interim goals or breaking things down. I mean, that's part of the personal retreat process for me anyways. And then the concept of don't break the chain pops up again here. But anything stand out to you from this section?
So I think if I'm remembering correctly when I was going through this, is I took down a lot of stuff here. He gives 5 ways to reawaken your motivation during a midpoint slump, and then 5 ways to combat a midlife slump. And I think I took down all of these ways and like the notes that attach to them as a preemptive thing, because earlier he said that most males, it's 52.9 years, right? We bottom out at 52.9 years. So I'm thinking, like, I'm going through this and I'm like, well, I'm 40 now. And if I bottom out at 52.9, I at least will remember, hey, I read that one book and I have some notes on what to do, right? When I hit this midlife slump. So I took a lot of stuff here just because I thought it was interesting. Do you remember us talking about the Buffett technique with his driver? We read it somewhere else. I can't remember where we read it though.
Yeah, I think it was Poor Charlie's Almanac.
Yeah, I can't. All I remember is like and I thought the exact same thing when I read it this time. Is basically you write down your 25 goals, then you circle the top 5, and basically it says get rid of everything else. And like, that's the part where, Mike, I always go, right? Like, cause it's like, hold on. No, I wrote down 25, right? I can't just get rid of 20, right? Like I wrote down those 25 for a reason. I think it's right. I really do. Like, I really think it's the right thing to do, but man, like every time I read about that, the Buffett technique. It's like, man, I don't know if I can be that vicious.
Yeah.
And maybe that's why I won't achieve anything of uber greatness on those top 5.
Well, you mentioned the way that the Time Hacker's Handbook chapters are put together. He does have a lot of like lists of things. Because of my approach to how I take notes from these books that we read, I just jot down the things that resonate with me. I really like, I got to those sections. I was like, I don't really care what the 5 steps to avoiding midlife crisis are. Maybe because I feel like I'm already there. I don't know. I'm not 52, but I am more than 40. So awesome. I don't know, but yeah, I just jotted down the couple random points there. But yeah, and that actually leads to something, general observation about this book. If I had read this when it came out, I think I probably would have taken more detailed notes, because there were some things that he talks about in here that I know that other books we've read have referenced the specifics. Like there was a section in here where it talks about the judges, the parole officers granting parole, being more lenient basically at the beginning of the day, bottoming out right before lunch, and then it spikes again after lunch. Yep. I've heard that story a bunch of other times in other books, and this was like the most authentic version of it. This is probably where they all got it from. So I don't know. I feel like if I had read this when it came out, I probably would have jotted down all that stuff from the Time Hacker's Handbook. But yeah, just kind of sparse this time around.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes complete sense.
All right. Let's talk about endings, and specifically here, let's talk about 9 enders. It sounds like maybe you just went through this.
I don't even, hold on. I'm not remembering this at all. What am I forgetting?
Okay. So 9 enders are people in the last year of a decade.
Oh yeah. Okay. You just triggered it. Yep. You triggered it.
Yeah. So, I mean, essentially, like if you're 39, if you're 29, it's like, I'm going to do this before I turn whatever. And then once you get over that point, it's like, depression sets in. I'm in a new decade.
Nope. I did not feel that for a second, which is why I didn't take down a note on it, because I was like, I've never felt that. I've never been like, oh, we're entering a new decade, blah, blah, blah. Nope. I'm just like, hey, it's another birthday, right? Like things haven't really changed that much, and we're just going to keep plowing, keep plugging through. So.
Yeah, well, the story that he tells with this is people who decided to run a marathon, in the last year of their whatever decade they happen to be in. And I have not ran a full marathon, so I can't completely empathize with the stories that he tells there. But once he started telling those stories about people who decided they were going to run their marathons because they were 29, 39, whatever, that got me thinking, when was it that I decided that I was going to get into running?
Nice.
I don't think it was, I know it wasn't at that particular point. Let's see. So my first race, I think, was 2019. So 6 years ago. I was probably 35, 36. So kind of right in the middle, but I can definitely see how this applies to the running community. It's always interesting to me how people that I see at these different races, and then they're just like, yeah, I'm done. You're like, well, what happened? It's like, I just decided, I'm not going to do that anymore. And probably because of this effect that he's talking about.
Yeah. Mike, I added an action item, and you can veto this, but I put in there, Mike and Cory, make a plan to run a marathon together.
Oh, a full marathon?
That'd be fun. A full marathon. Yeah, we'll have to find a really cool location, maybe like, Boise, Idaho, or something like that.
I don't know. I'm not going to veto it yet, but I'm going to reserve the right to do so in the future. I have no desire to do a full marathon. A half honestly, is so much training just for a half. Like,
I can honestly say that's probably a healthy decision. Like that is probably correct, right? Well, it like if you're not going to be like a go-getter, or like sorry, how do I say this? If you're not going to try to run for time,
Mm-hmm.
and like qualify for like Boston or whatever, and you're just doing it, like it actually beats the tar out of your body. Right? Like a full marathon beats
Yeah.
the tar out of your body. So I kind of agree with you on that. But maybe I can modify this to plan to run a half marathon together in Idaho. There we
That
go. I added the
works.
in Idaho because there might be a chance that that actually happens. And back to
Sounds
the book.
good.
Mike, one of the things I liked about this chapter were the encode, edit, and elevate, like the way he broke the chapter into those sections. This really kind of like connected with the way I think about this. I'm not remembering exactly what the encode part was right now, but basically these ideas of midpoints, endings, beginnings, these all things help us like wrap an idea around this. Then we can then take that idea and we can edit it. We can prune out things that don't make sense. We can add things that we want into there. So this is where your personal retreats would become really, really valuable in editing that way of life that we have going.
Mm-hmm.
And then elevate. I really got a lot out of elevate. Is like, okay, how do we take it and instead of thinking of that as like, oh, I'm stuck, right? Like, it's the midlife, kind of slump, or, oh, I didn't achieve everything I wanted to achieve, kind of a thing. It's like, okay, well, hold on. How do I take this and ramp it up? Like, I've done really cool things. How do I take it and ramp it up? And he wraps it up into like more actionable things in the time hacker, but I just like this. I like the 3 ways that he packaged that.
Yeah. The thing that I liked out of this chapter was he mentions share bad news first and then good news because we prefer happy endings. And my wife and I have had this thing ever since our kids were real little where we say end on a win. And so like this has meant a bunch of different things throughout the years, but just as an example, when they're real little and it's getting to be nap time, they're at the playground, you know that it's only a matter of time before they hurt themselves.
Oh, yes.
You're laughing because you've experienced the same
I'm
thing.
I'm laughing
probably
hysterically because, yes, keep going. Preach.
So as a parent, I'm always like not trying to, protect them, put them in a bubble. No one hurt my kids sort of a thing, but you're just kind of watching them and you can kind of tell when they are approaching that line. And I was at that point, I'm going back and forth between the different kids and I can tell like this one has reached their limit and we should probably go before there are tears. And at that point, my wife and I even have this what do you call it? Like a signal, where it's like, wrap it up, shut it down.
Shut it down.
It's like, okay, it's time to go. And then, we don't want to go yet. I'm like, yes, you do. Trust us.
The reason I laugh so hard is because we went skiing more this year than we've ever gone before, right? So our youngest one is 3 now, and he was able to hang for the most part. And you get down to the bottom of that run. It's like later in the afternoon, and it was a great run, and everybody's having fun. And like, what's going on in the back of your head is like, should we do another one? And the answer is no. We need to shut this thing down right now. Everybody had a great last run. Just put the skis away. Just go. Just end on that win, right? Really end on that win. That's why I was laughing so hard because I was like, yes, this is 100% true.
Yeah. I like the Time Hacker's Handbook from this chapter too. There's a couple things I jotted down here. So first of all, there's a section, when to quit a job. And there's 5 different questions. And you should quit, basically, he says, when you answer no to 2 or more. And I want to call this out because this could probably be useful for people. First question, do you want to be in this job on your next work anniversary? Next question, is your current job both demanding and in your control? That kind of gets into the idea of flow. But the third one, does your boss allow you to do your best work? The fourth one, are you outside the 3 to 5 year salary bump window? And number 5, does your daily work align with your long-term goals? I think that's actually a pretty brilliant framework.
I agree.
Yeah. And then the other thing and an action item that I jotted down from this is he talked about the shutdown routine and the whole idea of like ending on a win. And that got me thinking about how do I make How do I infuse joy into my shutdown routine? I've always struggled with a shutdown routine. So that's one of my action items. I want to figure out a way to make it happy. I have no idea if I'm going to be able to do this, but I think it's worth considering at least.
What's your first thought on like what would make your shutdown routine happy at the end of the day?
I
Do you have
don't
a thought?
know exactly. So the thing that as a parallel that comes to mind is like the Y has this big bowl of mints that you can, after your workout, you grab a mint on your way out the door.
Mm-hmm.
And so like having the mint is sort of a celebration for having done the thing. I don't know
Yeah.
what the celebration would be for the shutdown routine. If I was, this is in a notebook and I don't necessarily care about the historical artifacts, but like one thing that comes to mind is I've got my time block plan for the day, right? So at the very end of the day, just physically ripping it in half, be like, that one's done,
Yep.
I don't necessarily want to do that specifically, but something like that, I think adding that to the shutdown routine will probably translate into me actually doing it more often.
Yeah, the first one that came to my mind was ending the day by going to the gym. So normally I go to the gym super early in the morning because it's less crowded. But like I think that would be the joy of it's like, hey, great work. Like you got a day done. You did it. Everything was fantastic. Now go to the gym because it's like you just end on that note of doing something physical and then tie it into the fact that he says, the most satisfaction comes from when you go to the gym in the afternoon. I was like, it's a double whammy, right? Like we're double whammying this. I don't think I'm going to do that though. It just doesn't fit with the rest of it. Doesn't fit with the rest of life, right? Like, I mean, my
Yeah.
schedule, I would stay out later than I would want to stay out. And that just doesn't fit with my life.
Yeah, I am trying to get away from going to the gym in the afternoon. I do not like to be there when it's busy.
It's busy. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So the next section is part 3, syncing and thinking. And the first chapter from this chapter 6 is syncing fast and slow. Play on the Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. The idea behind syncing is, if you and I were walking together on the sidewalk, eventually our steps would become in sync. We would mimic each other. That's basically an example of syncing. And it talks about how groups have to synchronize on 3 different levels: to the boss, to the tribe, to the heart. I'm not sure that there's a big takeaway from this chapter for me. I get the principle that he's talking about here. He does introduce the idea of the Zeitgeber, which is I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, but it's an environmental signal that can synchronize the circadian clocks. It's German for time giver. That has me thinking about my environment and the different things that I could do with it to facilitate the structure that I want to have. But I did think of a story here that is relevant for this, because he talks about how touch increases cooperative behavior amongst teams. Now, you're not going to go hug all your team members all the time. So like, what does that actually look like? And I played tennis in college and I played doubles. So one of the things that we did as a doubles team, you could basically at that level, the difference between the teams that won and the teams that didn't was basically how well they worked together, how well they communicated. It wasn't, this guy just always missed the backhand volley, so hit it to his backhand. And one of the things that I was taught was every single point, no matter what happens, you come together in the middle of the court, you talk briefly, even if it's just a simple, one-line encouragement. Hey, don't worry about that. You got the next one. And then you high five. And just that coming together as a team significantly increased how well you played together, which when you're talking about college doubles, you really have to be in sync, because a lot of the points are over within a couple of seconds. The server serves to a specific place, and then it's called poaching, whether the person at the net is going to run across as the person is about to hit their return. You need to time that right if you're the person at the net, and then if you're the server, you have to run over to the other side and and protect the alley, up the line that your partner has left wide open. But you don't want to move too soon. You don't want to move too late. You don't want to give anything away. So that's immediately what I thought of. And just a simple little thing like, high five after every point, how big of a difference that can make.
Yeah. I think this chapter, if any of them, broke down a little bit for me from the when theme, like the overall when theme. I know what he's going for, and I think he's accurate, that you have to sync to the boss, you have to sync to the other people that you work with, and you have to sync to the mission of the organization that's happening at the time that it's happening. Like, I agree with that. Like, I think all of those are true. This felt a little more general, though, to me, that like me syncing with the boss, me syncing with the tribe, me syncing with the heart, of the organization, those are just good practices, right? Like if I'm not syncing, whether it be timing or whether it just be thought or whether it be motivation or what it might be, like these are just general good practices when it comes to working with others. So this is where the overall theme, I wasn't as worried about the when side of this one as much.
Yeah, I agree. It gets a little bit stretched at this part of the book. In the Time Hacker's Handbook, he's got 7 ways to find your syncer's high. So different ways that you could sync with other people, sing in a chorus, run together, row crew together, which I've heard stories of people who have rowed. I've never done that. Have you ever been a part of a rowing team?
I'm too big. They don't want me on the boat.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not like tall, but I'm not a skinny little guy either. So probably the same for me.
I mean, just brass tacks of it. Like my body fat percentage is too high. Like they don't want me on the boat. Like they want, if you're going to put mass on the boat, you want the mass to be muscle. Like that's all you want it to be.
That's
right?
True.
Like, the most efficient muscle you can have. And that doesn't, I also have never really had an opportunity to do that. So
yeah. Fun. Well, you could always dance, join a yoga class, be a part of a flash mob, or cook in tandem. So there are other options.
Most of those sound terrible to me, Mike.
I know,
like,
me
really,
too.
Most of those sound terrible.
Me too. Yeah, so not a whole lot for me in terms of what you actually do with this. I guess it's just things to be aware of. Ready to go to the last chapter?
I am. Yep, let's do it.
Okay, so the last chapter is thinking in tenses, and this really is just about how time can function as a noun, an adjective, or a verb. I thought that was an interesting anecdote, but also probably the weakest chapter of the book, in my opinion. It's sort of functioning as the conclusion, but it's still in this part 3. So I don't know. Interesting anecdote that only humans can simulate the future in their minds. I don't know what you do with that, I guess. Think ahead more.
Yeah.
I did like the quote on page 218 though about writing being an act of discovering what you think and what you believe. I literally did a webinar today where I shared the Dawson Trotman quote that thoughts disentangle themselves through lips and pencil tips, and I always add, and also clicky keyboards.
Yep.
I really do believe that you write not because you have something to say, you write because that's the way you discover what you have to say. Mm-hmm. Whether or not that gets published publicly kind of doesn't even matter. It's just part of the thinking and the sense-making process. So, but yeah, kind of a weird way to wrap up this book, in my opinion.
I would agree with you completely. Like I have very few notes in this chapter. Even like as I reviewed them prepping for the episode, it's just not really like a huge takeaway. Like, oh, the present's important. The past is important. Time matters. And I'm done. You know what I mean? Like I just didn't get a ton. I didn't get a ton out of this chapter.
And then also no Time Hacker's Handbook with this chapter.
I agree, which I thought was weird. Yeah, I thought that was weird too.
Yeah. I mean, I guess you can't have a part that only has one chapter, but I don't know. All right. Time for action items. So I've got a couple here. I've got one to take the assessment that no longer exists. So maybe that'll come back and I'll be able to take that one. The other 2 that I have are taking more caffeine naps. And I guess, since I have to do this regularly, I should probably figure out the schedule that I want to take those on.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have that yet, but I'm going to say specifically I want to have taken a caffeine nap on a day other than Sunday. We'll start there.
Nice. Nice.
I also want to redo the shutdown routine and make it happy. And
Okay.
yeah, I guess specifically the thing I'd love for you to call me out on there is whether I've got some sort of like little celebration associated with that sparks joy.
Okay. Great. So my two are take an actual lunch break. So no phone, away from work. This is really hard for me to do. It'll be easier for me to do in the summer because I'm not in my normal work day. But it'll be really hard for me to do, especially once school starts back up. And then my second one is figure out a better ending to the workday. So it's like I end and I have a commute and like I kind of do this, but I think there's just a better ending to that day that'll set me up better when I get home to kind of walk in and turn into dad mode. So I want to figure out what that might be. I have no idea what that's going to be, but I want to figure out what that might be. And then the last one that Mike and I both have, which he's either going to like me saying this or not like me saying this, is we're going to make a plan to run a half marathon, probably in Idaho. So that's one of the.
Well, Idaho would be cool. I mean, if you ever want to come to Wisconsin, I've got a place for you to stay for the Door County Half Marathon.
Okay.
That's actually the one I just ran a couple weeks ago. I did it in an hour, 55 minutes. So
nice.
like
Sub 2. Good work.
8:45 pace-ish.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Which is not my fastest, but kind of didn't really care. It was just for funsies. So
how'd you feel afterwards?
I felt pretty good. It's not like it took me days to recover or anything like that, but was definitely sore the next day.
Yeah. I mean, we're getting old, Mike.
It's true. It's true. Turns out that one's always fun though because it's through the big state park in Door County, so
nice.
it's really pretty. Very hilly though.
So the Charlottesville, when we were in the Charlottesville one in Virginia, there was a monster hill on that one that was no fun. All right, you ready to go style and rating?
Let's do it. All right, so my book, I will start. We kind of talked quite a bit about the style already, and I really like the style. I wish there was a little bit more substance, to be honest. I think what he talks about is great, and I love the flow of the part 1 and part 2. Part 3, you definitely lost me. It's kind of a weird way to end the book. And I mean, he's the one who talks about like how you end is really important. Endings alter our perceptions. So actually one thing we didn't talk about to my notes is the James Dean effect, where we're adding mildly pleasant years to a very positive life does not enhance but decreases perception of the quality of life. So what I'm going to do here is kind of the James Dean effect for this book, I feel. Adding additional chapters which are good but not stellar decreases my my rating on the overall material here. And again, like all of this to say he's way more successful and a much better writer than I probably ever will be. So part of this is like, well, who are you to criticize, Daniel Pink for this sort of thing? But I loved this book through the first 2 parts. Yeah. And then the third part hit and it was like, are we done yet?
Yeah, I won't go as strong as that, but I agree with you. It fizzled at the end.
Yeah, and it was weird. Like I got done and it was almost like it left a bad taste in my mouth. It wasn't a bad book by any means, and I definitely still really enjoyed it. I think I would recommend this one to just about anybody in the bookworm audience. But yeah, it was awkward to find myself thinking like, I'm glad this book is over now. What happened? When you're reading this 2 days ago, this was like the best book you ever read. So I'm going to give it 4 stars, just because of the weird part 3 and the weird conclusion. But I'm very happy to have read it, and I think I will definitely reference stuff from parts 1 and 2. Those were absolute gold, and I don't think that part 3 was necessarily just tacked on because he needed to have 3 parts or the book wasn't long enough or anything like that. But if you would have just taken the first 2 parts, packaged that up and quit at page, I don't know where part 3 actually starts. That would have been like, ideal in my opinion. Now that's probably not ideal from a publisher's perspective, but yeah, absolutely phenomenal for the first 150-ish pages, and then kind of let down a little bit at the end.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with you. I think it's a 4-star book. Wasn't by any means my most outstanding favorite book that I've ever read, or that what I got like so much out of. But at the same time, it wasn't also one of the ones that would rank below a 4. So I think I got a lot out of this one. Thinking about just different things from both a practical level through the Time Hacker's Handbook, and from like a scientific, this is the research, kind of a summary of the research on these ideas level. So I liked that. I liked the flow of the book. I thought it flowed really, really well. My chapter 6 and chapter 7, kind of like you just described, like I got done with them and I was just kind of like, okay. It's like, but like up until that, I thought everything went really well. Even in chapter 6, like I like the boss, the tribe, and the heart. I think those are good aspects. I just think they're more broad than just with the timing of things. Like, so when you're going to call a book when, and you're going to talk about timing, and then you bring these broader aspects to those chapters, it's like I just kind of had a meh for the last part. I would recommend this book to people. Like I would totally tell them to read it. And I would not think twice about doing that if they're thinking about things like this. But I also don't think this is one of those must reads, right? Like that, I wouldn't throw this at somebody and be like, listen, you have to read this book. It is so good, kind of a thing. It just sits right there in a well-produced, good book, little fizzle at the end. But otherwise, I think not only for the show, right? I think it was a good book for the show, but I also just think it was a good book for me to read personally and just generally. So I was happy with it.
Yeah, I agree. This is a good one, just not to the level of one of the best that we've ever covered. Although it definitely seemed like it was gonna hit that tier at the beginning. All right. Well, let's put When on the shelf. What's next, Cory?
All right. So I have the next book. It is called The Confident Mind by Nate Zinsser. And Zinsser is or was, I didn't go and dig into the details, a faculty member at West Point. And basically, as I'm looking through it, it's his experiences working with primarily athletes, but his experience working with people about confidence and the way they're thinking about confidence. It's called The Confident Mind, a battle-tested guide to unshakable performance. So if you're going to read along with us, pick up that The Confident Mind by Dr. Nate Zinsser.
Definitely have inner excellence vibes with this one.
I got the same thing as well. If you read Inner Excellence, folks, you're going to get a similar thing. But then Mike, you have our book after that. What's that?
Yeah, the next book after that, I honestly have no idea what this book is about. I just have seen the Let Them Theory by Mel Robbins showing up everywhere, and it's consistently been at the top of the bestsellers list. It looks like an interesting book. What's interesting about this book in particular for me, at the top of the New York Times bestsellers list, they tend to be a bunch of white dudes who are writing these books. This is a woman who has written this book, and it has been at the top of those lists for a very long time. And I've heard enough people mention this book that it's actually been in my collection. I've had it now for quite a while, and I remember buying it several months ago, and then just checking the list. I'm like, it's still up there. It seems like it's been up there for a while. Like, we should probably read this one. So yeah, we're going to cover the Let Them Theory by Mel Robbins, and for no other reason other than it just keeps popping up on my radar, and it feels like one that we should have read.
Mike, it is a life-changing tool that millions of people can't stop talking about.
I know. Sounds,
come on.
That sounds clickbaity and like I won't like it, but at least we'll find out if I won't like it. Yep. I mean, if you're up there by James Clear in Atomic Habits for as long as she has been, there's got to be some substance in there.
Oh yeah, I would agree.
All right, got any Get books?
So yes, we are.
Look at you.
we are planting a church. So as part of the planting the church, the senior pastor was like, "Hey, would you read A Praying Church by Paul Miller?" So if anybody is in the Christian community, Paul Miller wrote a book called The Praying Life, or A Praying Life before, that was really popular about prayer, and now it's A Praying Church. I don't remember how new it is. That's 2023, so it's a fairly new book, but that's going to be one of the Gap books that I read in the time being. I'm not going to tell you I'm going to get it done by the time we do, because is Gap book has to be done before the next one, or I didn't
No,
think so.
just basically what you're reading that's not bookworm related.
Yeah, so that would be that one. And just, I mean, spoiler alert for all the listeners, pretty much all of my Gap books are either going to be like work related or church related, and that's really where I'm going to read if I'm not reading bookworm type books.
Yeah, that's cool. I have a Gap book which I'm not even sure I'm going to be able to read, but this one came on my radar recently, and like I was thinking through the live event the last several weeks. We talked at the beginning about some of that experience, and I struggled really hard with that. Like, we'd have no business running a live event. We don't have a bunch of tickets pre-sold. We should just cancel this thing. And who are you to do this? So this book, I have it. I bought it several weeks ago, and I want to go through it. It's called You Can Just Do Things by Jay Yang. Nice. I feel like maybe this is something that I need to hear. Now, we've gotten through the live event and it was great. So, there's evidence there that we should do it again. But I struggle with that imposter syndrome quite a bit. And I think this will be a good one.
Have I told you about a book called The Confident Mind, right? That might help you with that.
Yep. Yeah. So that's the first one, and that's a long one. So that's why I'm not sure I'll get to this, but I saw a couple other people mentioning this one, and there are quite a few books out there that are titled You Can Just Do Things. So this specifically is by Jay Yang, and it's pretty short. It's like 120 pages.
Oh, nice.
So yeah,
awesome.
That's that. And if you want to support us on our book reading journey, we would love to have you do that. You can go to patreon.com/bookwormfm. And I believe because of the Apple ruling now, you don't even have to choose which option if you're on your Apple device.
Yep.
$7 a month to support the show. You get access to a pro show, which has no ads, and a bonus segment. Today we talked about my experiment building a custom AI agent inside of my community. You also get the bootleg feed, which goes out right after we record this. So generally about 2 weeks early. Our schedule's a little bit mixed up this time around, but
yep.
You get to hear all the mistakes that we made. We get to hear us troubleshoot levels with recording gear and all that fun stuff. Yep. You get a bookworm wallpaper, and ultimately you get our appreciation, because we don't have a ton of ads, and that is the thing that keeps the lights on here for the Bookworm podcast. So thank you for everyone who throws a little bit of money at the show. We really appreciate it. And if you want to join that amazing group of people, you can do so at patreon.com/bookwormfm.
Yeah. Let me add one more thing. Your appreciation is really the big one. Thank you so much for doing that. We have started to do a live stream though as well. So
yes.
if you're interested in listening to us talk about the book live, we will throw that out through the Patreon feed, and you can watch it there as well. So I just wanted to make sure we threw that in there too.
Yeah, props to Cory for setting all that up. All right. Well, if you are reading along with us, pick up The Confident Mind by Dr. Nate Zinsser, and we will talk to you in a couple of weeks.